Good morning, primary threes. So today we are going to learn about Egyptian tombs, pyramids, and burial sites. Alright, so ancient Egyptians, as we already know, believed in lots of different gods and goddesses who ruled different aspects of their lives. Okay, so if you can remember, last week we've learned about 7 gods and a goddess. So here again we have Ra or Re, if you can remember, is the sun god. We have Isis here, who's the goddess of nature and the goddess of healing and magic. And here is Anubis, or the god of death, the god of mummification, embalming, the afterlife, and the underworld. Ancient Egyptians, of course, they had temples where they worshipped their gods. And these temples also was where these gods and goddesses lived. And usually these temples are in the form of statue. So this photo on the right, it shows the temple of Horus at Edfu. Now if you can remember Horus, he is the god of kingship and the sun and the sky, underworld, and they call it Duat. And you know that they believe that Duat is just on the west side of the Nile River. So that is why if a person who is living on the east side of the Nile River, his people needed to take him across the river and get him buried into the west side of the river. Okay, so they believed that when a person dies, that person goes to Duat, which of course they believe that it's just on the west side of Nile River, and the hall of the two truths, where his heart is weighed against the deeds he had committed in his life. Now how do they weigh the heart? Okay, so they weigh the heart against the feather of Ma'at, which represents truth. Now if the heart is good enough, that means the heart is lighter than the feather, that person or the dead person could only then travel through to a new land. Ancient Egyptians used the process called mummification to preserve dead bodies because it was believed that the body would be needed in the afterlife, and also because mummification was very expensive. Okay, so only richer people, especially pharaohs, the kings, and the noblemen, could afford to be made into mummies. So here are the steps on how to mummify a dead body. First, of course, the body was washed and cleaned. Then the brain was pulled out through the nose with a hook. Yes, a hook is inserted through the nose up to the nostrils just to take out the brain. Alright, the third step, okay, the intestines, liver, and stomach, and the lungs were removed through a slit in the side of the body. The organs were then placed in canopic jars. One organ is, of course, one canopic jar. And the heart, of course, because that dead person will need his or her heart to be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the heart was left inside the body. So the body was then covered in a special salt called natron. Okay, and this salt dries out the body, and it was then left for around 40 days. And of course, after 40 days, they need to wash off the natron and stuff the body with sawdust or linen. Because of the salt, the body shrunk. That's why they needed to stuff everything. Put stuff inside the dead body. Alright, so that the dead body would look a little bit natural. Okay, so the body was then coated with oils and resin. And these oils are not just normal ones, but they are the special oils. Of course, to make the body smell good. Okay, next one. It was then wrapped in bandages from head to toe. Okay, and the last step, of course, if you can remember King Tut wearing a mask, the last step, a mask of a person's face was placed over the mummy, which was finally laid in a coffin or series of coffins called sarcophagus.
Mummification, Ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians believed in several rituals in order to reach the afterlife into the next world and achieve immortality. Death was seen as a temporary state, and a dead person's spirit needed a body, so to preserve it, a process of mummification was used. This process, the quality of the mummification, varied depending on the person's status and wealth. The highest ranks in society got the best method of preservation after they died. Firstly, the body was washed in water and salt. The brain was then removed and discarded, using a hook through the nostrils. The body was then slit open and the organs were removed, except for the heart, which the ancient Egyptians believed would guide the person into the afterlife. The liver, lungs, intestines, and stomach were kept and placed in 4 canopic jars, one for each organ. These jars each featured a lid sculpted as one of the sons of Horus. Hapi, who protected the lungs, Duamutef, the stomach, Imseti, the liver, and Kebeseneth, the intestines. The body was then filled with myrrh, cassia, and other spices, then sewn up together and packed with a special salt called natron for up to 70 days, which prevented the flesh from rotting. After this process, the body was shriveled and dehydrated, so the embalmers would stuff the empty body with sawdust and linen to bring it back to its original shape, oil the skin to soften it, and add false eyes and a wig to make the corpse more lifelike. A resin was used to cover the body to prevent mold, and then the whole corpse was wrapped in layers of linen bandages. A face mask was made to look like the person, then was placed on the head of the corpse, and the body was placed into a wooden case, or if the person were rich, a stone sarcophagus. Mummies would be buried with items they might have needed for the afterlife, including jewelry, clothes, furniture, even pet cats and dogs who were mummified as well to keep them company. The less expensive method for the middle classes, or those who wish to avoid the expense, involved the corpse being injected with oil taken from cedar trees, liquefying the internal organs. It was then packed with natron for up to 70 days and given back to the family. The Egyptian embalmers were so skilled that even today, people that were mummified thousands of years ago still have some recognizable features. Subscribe for more history videos.
Alright, so that was the process of mummification. So here is another illustration that shows what the embalming process might have looked like. Okay, so your teacher can pause this video so that you guys can discuss what you can see here. Alright, now let's take a look at this one. I'm sure everybody knows what this one is. So this is a pyramid of Giza. Pyramids were built as tombs for the pharaohs of Egypt. So the shape of the pyramid was to symbolize the mound that came out of the earth when the world was created by Ra. So inside the pyramids are a series of rooms and burial chambers. So this is the biggest, the Great Pyramid of Giza, okay, which is 138 meters tall. And can you imagine 10 football field? Yes, 10 football field, or almost 10 football field. That is the base of the pyramid. And it's also estimated 2.3 million stone blocks. So can you imagine all these stone blocks? 2.3 million. Wow, that's a lot. So as you can see here, you see how big the pyramid is by looking at how small these people are. Alright, so if you can see those people at the bottom. Now let's take a look how the pyramids were built and why and who built them. Right.
As you already know, ancient Egyptians believed in life after death, and that's why they built the pyramids, which were the pharaohs' tombs. During their construction, there were thousands of workers for a very long time. Before, we believed that they were built by slaves. But thanks to archaeologists' work, we know that they were built by citizens that worked for salt, wheat, or barley. These workers were organized and directed by architects and engineers that made sure everything was calculated and done properly. Today, we see that pyramids are old, but when they had just been built, they were covered in beautiful white limestone. And the tip of the pyramid was golden. I'm sure they were astonishing. Inside the pyramids, there are tunnels, chambers, and secret passageways. And this was where they left the pharaohs' mummified bodies.
Alright, so that concludes our lesson for today. Okay, so here's your task that you need to submit on Edmodo. So on your paper, guys, you need to rewrite the mummification process based on the photos below. So here's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Alright, so your teacher can go back to this one later. And of course, you also need to have this task number 2. Okay, so what are you going to do? You're going to record a video of you describing what each of these objects tells us about ancient Egyptian beliefs on life and death. Alright, so that's it for today, guys. You can go back to task number 1 and do your work. Bye.